Hello! Welcome to our channel where we share the most thrilling stories. Today, you're in for an incredible tale about a neighbor who decided to declare someone else's pool public property. But our hero wasn't one to back down easily. Ready to find out how it all ended? Then let's dive in. I had always dreamed of a house by the ocean, and 2 years ago, my dream came true. My name is Thomas Wilson. I'm 35, an architect, and I enjoy the quiet after long days on projects. My new home in Santa Barbara was perfect. A small cozy building with wide windows offering a breathtaking view of the Pacific Ocean. But most importantly, there was the pool. Yes, the pool wasn't located directly on my property, as is usually the case. It sat right on the border with the beach, on the sand itself. The previous owner had built it, obtaining all the necessary permits and registering the area as private property. Without a tall fence, the pool looked natural, like an extension of the landscape. It became my perfect retreat. My pool on the beach was my sanctuary. After work, I would go down there with a book or a glass of wine and enjoy the sunset. The first few months after moving in were like a fairy tale. The neighbors were friendly, and the local community turned out to be cozy and close-knit. I even joined a couple of tennis games and befriended the owner of the local coffee shop. Life flowed peacefully, and my pool remained my little piece of paradise. But the peace didn't last long. About 6 months later, Missy Green moved into the house next door. Missy was a woman in her 50s with an impeccably styled haircut and a voice that reminded me of an alarm clock. She had moved to Santa Barbara after retiring, seemingly deciding that the sunny shore would be the perfect place to start a new chapter in her life. We first met when I was fixing some lounge chairs by the pool. She approached me with a wide smile and asked, "Good afternoon. Is this your pool? How wonderful that it's so conveniently located." "Yes, it's mine," I replied with a reserved smile. "Really? I thought it was part of the beach. You know, for everyone." Her comment surprised me slightly, but I politely explained, "No, the pool is private. I have all the documents for it. The previous owner built it as an addition to the house." Missy nodded, but it was clear from her expression that my answer hadn't satisfied her. I chalked it up to the usual curiosity of new neighbors and went back to my tasks. However, soon her interest began to cross the line of simple, neighborly curiosity. A few days later, I noticed her walking around the pool with guests pointing in my direction and explaining something. The next day, I went out to the pool and found 2 unfamiliar teenagers jumping into the water. "Excuse me, who are you?" I asked sternly. Missy said the pool was public. One of them shouted before disappearing into the water. I sighed and decided to speak to Missy directly. Catching her near her house, I carefully explained the situation. "Missy, you see, the pool is private property. I know it's not fenced off, but that doesn't mean it's public. I'm asking you not to bring anyone here again." She smiled tensely and said, "Thomas, come on, it's just water. You don't mind, right? We're neighbors after all." "Actually, I do mind," I replied firmly. "I don't want any misunderstandings. The pool belongs to me, and I expect everyone to respect that." That ended the conversation. At first, everything seemed like the calm before the storm. For several days, the pool remained untouched. No one came by, and I hoped that my conversation with Missy had been convincing enough. I even thought that perhaps I had been too harsh and worried for nothing. But that was before Saturday. That morning, I woke up to the sound of loud laughter and splashing water. Approaching the bedroom window, I froze. A crowd of people had gathered around my pool. Adults, children, even a dog was running across the sand. They had set up umbrellas, loungers, and coolers as if it were their personal beach club. Missy stood in the center of the commotion looking smug, wearing oversized sunglasses and a wide-brimmed hat as though she were directing the entire chaos. My patience snapped. I quickly threw on a t-shirt and stormed outside, striding toward the pool. "What is going on here?" My voice came out louder than I expected. Missy turned around and smiled as if nothing was wrong. "Oh, Thomas, good morning. We decided to have a little picnic, and the pool fits in so perfectly. How could we not take advantage?" "Missy, we've already talked about this. The pool is private property. It's not for public use. I asked you not to bring anyone here again." She sighed and crossed her arms over her chest, the shouts and squeals of kids splashing in the water punctuating her response. "Thomas, come on. The pool is open right by the beach. You do realize how it looks. like it's for everyone. It's not fair. Such luxury for just one person. Luxury. Do you even hear what I'm saying? I could barely contain my frustration. Missy, the pool belongs to me. This is my lot, my property, and you're breaking the law by bringing people here. The law? She scoffed, as if I'd said something absurd. Thomas, you're overreacting. It's just water and relaxation. A place this wonderful should be shared. I don't have to share what rightfully belongs to me. I snapped. Get everyone out of here now, or I'll call the police for trespassing. Her smile faded and her face grew tense. She clearly hadn't expected such resistance, but instead of leaving, she took a step forward and raised her voice. You want to call the police, Thomas? Fine, go ahead. Let's see what they say when they find out the pool is on beach property. It's on my property, Missy, and I have all the documents to prove it. I pointed toward my house. Get out. Now, we'll see who's right here, she hissed through gritted teeth. Missy waved to the others. All right, guys, let's pack up. Clearly, our neighbor doesn't understand hospitality. Gathering their things with offended looks, they left, but I knew this wasn't the end. This was only the beginning of a real war. Over the next few days, the situation escalated. I noticed that Missy had started giving tours for her guests. She would bring people to the pool, point toward the house, and emotionally tell them something. I decided to install security cameras so I wouldn't have to rely on my assumptions anymore. The peak of the conflict occurred the following week. Coming home after work, I found a whole group of teenagers by the pool with inflatable mattresses and a speaker blasting loud music. Missy stood nearby like a warden. Missy, what is this? I shouted as I approached the group. Oh, Thomas, they're just kids. They're relaxing. What's it to you? She replied mockingly. You were clearly told, get off my property. This is trespassing. I pulled out my phone and began dialing the police. Only then did her confidence vanish. She yelled at the teenagers to pack up their things. They reluctantly got out of the pool while I stood there with the feeling that this was only getting worse. That evening, I overheard the neighbors talking. Missy had spread rumors that I had supposedly taken over the public pool and wouldn't let anyone use it. She complained that I was a spoiled rich man who doesn't want to share. Some neighbors believed her, some didn't. But one thing was clear, Missy had no intention of backing down. The next morning, I found the pool cordoned off with community pool ribbons, and in the sand, there were signs claiming the area was for public access. She had clearly moved to a new tactic, deceit and manipulation. I couldn't let this slide. I pulled out the property documents and decided it was time to take serious action, to talk to a lawyer and prepare for the next battle. The following morning, I stood by the pool with a cup of coffee in hand, staring at those same community pool signs stuck in the sand. I felt like I was trapped in some absurd movie. Missy had definitely crossed the line. She wasn't just bringing guests anymore. She was trying to create the illusion that the pool actually belonged to the public. I tore down the signs and removed the ribbons, then headed to the local attorney. Henry Brooks, an experienced lawyer, listened to my story carefully, reviewed the property documents, and said confidently, Thomas, don't worry. You are completely in the right. Your pool is your private property, regardless of its location near the beach. Any encroachment is illegal. I'll draft an official trespassing notice and send it to Missy. I left his office with a slight sense of relief. Finally, the situation seemed about to be resolved. I naively thought that a legal letter would bring Missy back to reality, but I was wrong. The next day, things got even worse. Returning home after my morning run, I heard a loud noise. It was a pneumatic hammer. Approaching closer, I saw construction workers building what looked like a wooden deck by my pool. And who was standing beside them, barking orders like a foreman? Of course, Missy Green. What's going on here? I shouted, barely containing my anger. One of the workers looked up from his hammer. Good morning, sir. We were hired to install a safety deck by the pool for public convenience. What public convenience? This is private property. Stop working immediately. I rushed toward Missy, who smiled with fake calm. Thomas, calm down. Her voice was both sweet and infuriating. I thought the deck would make the pool more accessible for everyone. Sand is inconvenient, don't you think? You should have thought of that yourself. Missy, I warned you. This is not your property. You can't build anything here. I'm calling the police right now. Go ahead. She shrugged. I have papers showing this is public access. I filed a request with the city administration to reconsider the status of your pool. I froze. The city administration? Reconsidering the status? I couldn't believe she had gone this far. Missy had exploited the pool's location near the beach and tried to have the city authorities declare it part of public infrastructure. I called the police. When the officers arrived, I explained the situation and showed them all the documents proving the pool was my private property. The police looked at the construction workers, then at Missy, and said, "Ma'am, if you don't have the owner's permission, this is illegal construction and trespassing on private property. You'll have to stop work." But this is a public area," Missy insisted. "I'm telling you, everyone uses this pool." "That doesn't matter," the officer replied, pointing at me. "This man owns the property by law." Missy clenched her fists and bit her lip, but the workers began packing up their tools. Before leaving, she turned to me and hissed, "This isn't over, Thomas. I'll see justice done." "Good luck with that," I replied coldly. That same evening, I received a letter from the city administration. Missy had indeed filed a petition to review the pool's status, claiming it had historically been used for public purposes. Now I had to provide official evidence in my defense. I met again with my lawyer, Henry. He was surprised by Missy's persistence but said, "Don't worry, Thomas. We have the property documents and the history of the pool. There are no grounds for it to be declared public, but be prepared to defend your property in court." I sighed. All I wanted was peace and quiet, but now I found myself in the middle of a drawn-out conflict. While I gathered documents preparing for a potential hearing, I noticed how the neighbors began to split into two camps. Some came up to me and expressed support. "Thomas, hang in there. She's gone completely crazy. It's your pool." Others, apparently swayed by Missy's manipulations, looked at me with judgment and muttered things like, "What's his problem? It's not like he even uses it." I felt like a hero in a besieged fortress. But I knew one thing. This pool was mine. I was ready to go all the way to prove it. The day of the hearing at the city administration came. I had barely slept the night before, replaying arguments in my head and preparing for everything. Naturally, Missy Green showed up prepared, clutching a folder and bringing along a support group of several neighbors she had convinced to take her side. On my side, my lawyer Henry sat beside me, calm and confident. He laid out a stack of documents on the table. My property rights, plot plans, the pool's history, and even letters from previous owners confirming that the pool had always been private. The hearing began with Missy's statement. She spoke loudly and confidently, putting on an air of indignation. "This pool has been part of the beach area for years. People have always used it, and it's unfair that one person suddenly decided to close it off from the community. It's a public good, and we demand it be recognized as such." She even brought in a few witnesses, neighbors who claimed they had seen their children swimming in the pool before Thomas owned it. But as soon as Henry asked them a few clarifying questions, their testimonies fell apart. No one could say who let them in or when exactly it happened. Then Henry took the floor. "Dear Commission," he began calmly, laying documents on the table. "Let's look at the facts. First, here are the property documents proving that this pool is private property and belongs to my client, Thomas Wilson." He handed the papers to the officials, who began reviewing them. "Second," Henry continued, "the pool was constructed with permission by the previous owner. There have never been any rights to public use of this property. Mrs. Green bases her claims on personal assumptions, not on law or facts." Missy snapped, "But the pool isn't fenced off. That means it's accessible to everyone." Henry didn't flinch. "Under California law, the absence of a fence does not make private property public. If someone uses another's property without permission, it is called trespassing." The commission members exchanged glances, and I felt their opinion shifting in my favor. At that moment, Missy tried to go all in. "This pool shouldn't be private. It's so close to the beach that it practically blends into it. Is that fair? We, the local residents, deserve a place to relax too." Henry responded in a way that left Missy with no arguments. "Fairness is not determined by emotions, Mrs. Green. It is determined by the law, and the law is on my client's side." The hearing lasted nearly 2 hours, but in the end, the commission's decision was clear. Mr. Wilson is the sole legal owner of the pool and the adjacent property. Any use of this property without his permission constitutes a violation of the law. Missy sat there, lips pressed tightly together, staring at the table. A few of her supporters quickly retreated, realizing they had been dragged into a pointless conflict. I, on the other hand, felt a massive weight lift off my shoulders. But this wasn't the end. The next day, I found a letter from Missy at my pool. There were no apologies or regrets. Instead, she wrote, "Congratulations, Thomas. You won. But you won't escape the neighbor's judgment. Loneliness, that's your real price for this pool." I didn't know whether to laugh or be angry, but instead of arguing further, I chose to do something different. That weekend, I put up a new sign by the pool. Private property. Access by invitation only. And then I invited the neighbors over for a barbecue by the pool. I approached everyone, even those who had once taken Missy's side, and said, "I want us to leave this conflict in the past. This pool is indeed mine, but I'm happy to share the joy with good neighbors. By invitation. Let's start over." Surprisingly, most neighbors gladly accepted the invitation. We ate, laughed, and the kids splashed in the pool. The atmosphere was light, as if nothing had ever happened. Missy didn't come, of course. She sat on her porch watching us, making a show of acting indifferent. A couple of months later, she sold her house and moved away, leaving behind only memories of her senseless crusade, and I went on living my life. My pool remained my private paradise, but now it often hosted friends and neighbors. I realized that sometimes the best way to win a war isn't just to prevail, it's to find a way to live in peace. And you know what? The quiet of Santa Barbara had never been so sweet. Did you enjoy the story? Want more thrilling plots with unexpected twists? Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications.